Hello and welcome to the In-Depth Violin Guide. And for today's episode, we will dig deeper into tone production and we will continue where we left off from the past video. So, as we discussed from the previous video, tone production's main factors are bow speed, bow pressure, and the sounding point. Now, we would discuss how these three factors can affect the color and character of our tones. So, again, to recap, each one factor can be changed in order for you to achieve a certain sound that you would need and what you would want in a certain piece. So we change bow speed, we change pressure, and we change sounding point. And while we mix and match these factors, we get certain sounds that will cater to our taste and to the need of the piece. We will try to characterize the sounds and colors that we can produce into two main types. The first type uses bow pressure as its main source of dynamics. Now, this is how it would sound. We tend to play with less pressure and more bow speed. So the more bow speed that we have, the more sound or the more volume. So the less speed, the lesser the sound. Now, when it comes to the sounding point, this first type is played near the fingerboard. So as we've discussed in the previous video, when we play near the fingerboard, the sound is warmer and less powerful, but of course it's very airy in a sense. Okay, so this is the first type. We use this when we want to play warm, beautiful tones, right? For slow movements, for example. So we use that first type of color for those types of passages. No? It would sound very light, very airy, very solid. Yes. Now, the second type is more based on your bow pressure than the speed. Now, if you try the second type, or if you try to apply more pressure here on this sounding point, there's a tendency that you would hit other strings as well, and it won't sound as good, right? So we play with this type near the bridge. Okay, so less concerned with the speed when it comes to volume, but more concentrated with the pressure. Less pressure. Even though I'm using the same length of bow, I can change the dynamics easily. by changing the pressure. So with this in mind, with these two types, you see a huge difference of mechanics when it comes to what do I need to focus on in changing dynamics. And of course, the color changes as well. So the first type is very light and very solemn. The second type is very powerful and dense. So you use this with very striking pieces. Right? So you use that for those kinds of passages. Okay. So again, these two doesn't mean that we have these two types that you can only use one over the other. No? Again, you need to have a lot of depth in your playing. So you can adjust accordingly depending on what you're playing. You don't need to stick to one type and leave the other type away, no? So sometimes, of course, even though you're playing very powerful passages, you would need certain notes to play very light. No? So again, we're just trying to build on these two types where we can try to play in whatever color or type that we want. Again, we're only changing the three factors. So the first type is the light bowing. So you use more bow speed rather than the weight. And then the second type is using more weight. You can change mid-piece or mid-phrase. It really depends on what you need. So the thing to remember is that you need to master both so that you can have more variations in your color and technique. Let's go into how do we fix certain points of playing or certain points in which there are struggles in your tone production. So tone production relies a lot still on the movement of your hand, especially your bow arm. Because the bow is producing at least 80% of all the sounds that you are playing. So even though if you have good left hand, but your right hand isn't trained well enough, you won't be able to produce as good of a sound as you need. So what are those things that you need to keep in mind? So in order for you to put the enough pressure or enough movement, there are certain angles or shapes that your fingers will actually take, no? So for example, when we're playing down bow and up, our hand naturally adheres to the direction where your arm is going, right? So these springs should be mobile enough to move. Now, what happens if we don't move them according to the position that we need to go? So for example, if I'm going down, but my hand stays up, what happens? Let's try. So there's a certain tendency of the bow bouncing a bit. Now, let's try the other way around. I'm going up, but my hand is in a down bow position. So there is this unevenness that happens when we do that. Why? Because, again, the hand guides the bow to where it needs to go. Now, in order to fix this, we make sure that our fingers and our whole hand goes to the direction it needs to lead. So you don't do this, right? So that it would be more relaxed and more pleasing. The sound would be more even also. Now, there are two main types of defects when it comes to faulty tone production also. So aside from the bouncing bows that happens, there is two type of a sound and too loose of a sound. So what would that sound like? For example, so from those two types, we can play here. You can hear the sound is quite loud, but it's very, very hollow. So this means that there isn't enough pressure, and you can put enough pressure. So what do you do to make it a little bit tighter is that you move your fingers into position. Okay. So what happens is my fingers are too close. When the sound is too loose, your fingers might be too close. So you can't add enough pressure. So what you do is you make sure that your tips are almost near the stick. But again, we're not trying to do this. Okay? We want the contact points to be a little bit closer to the tips rather than inwards to your hand. So this would give you adequate position, that the right position for you to play more. So again, from here to here. Now, that's how you tighten. Now, how do you loosen naman? So that's the other way around. Sometimes, especially for beginners, we tend to hold the bow in an awkward position. Because again, the natural tendency of people is to either grip or clasp or hold it too careful. Right? Sometimes, we hold the bow so near our tips. This gives us so much tension. So we don't want that tension to be here on the hands. We want all the pressure to go down onto the bow. So what do? We just release it and make sure that our fingers are wrapping around. Instead of gripping it with the tips, we make sure that our contact points are correct. Okay. So from this sound to this sound. Okay. Now, a good way to practice your tone production is to change sounding points while playing. So again, open string works best for this because you don't need to worry with your left hand. So, try to play near your fingerboard with more bow. And gradually moving it. So, you see that the sound changes, and as the sound changes, the way you stroke your bow also changes. Your priority changes from speed to pressure as you grow closer. So that's how you try to find the exact quality that you want to use in order for you to play. So at this point, we have discussed many of the basic movements in violin playing. And I hope this has helped you in developing your skills as a violinist. Now, we will end the season with this video. And of course, just stay tuned because on the next season of the In-Depth Violin Guide, we will go deeper into each concept that we have discussed from our left hand to the bowings. So I hope you still join me in this journey, and I hope that you are learning well and that you're all safe. Thank you to all the subscribers who are tuning in to this show weekly, and we'll be back hopefully sooner than later for more of the In-Depth Violin Guide. So watch out for season 2. This would be very, very interesting. We'll be talking about bow patterns, we'll be talking about shifting, the vibrato, and all of that stuff. So like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel for more. And I'll see you on the next video. And thanks for watching.